Hello, out there, Thrive Market wine friends. This is Josh, and I'm really excited today to take us through a tasting of our fall bundle. This is a bundle I'm particularly excited about. It's really kind of a globe-trotting bundle. It takes us all the way around the world from France to South Africa to Argentina to Spain. It has a wonderful array of wines that are going to be really interesting to taste together, and we think are going to make a lot of people really happy over the fall season. All of these wines actually are made entirely from grapes grown organically, which is something that we're really proud of. And we'll start with our white wines today, and then we'll move into our reds. We have two medium-bodied reds. We have a delicious Malbec from Mendoza, Argentina, a Rioja from Spain, and then the other two red wines are a little bit kind of leaning towards a little more of a medium to fuller bodied style. And interestingly enough, these two wines are made by a couple of the same grapes or varietals, as I call them in wine speak, just kind of in different proportions. And the Bordeaux that we have has the addition of a third grape called Cabernet Franc to go along with the Merlot and Cabernet. So all that being said, really excited to get into these wines. And we're going to start with the Chateau de la Gravelle Muscadet. The Muscadet region, the Muscadet grape, the grape also known as Melon, is an area in the western coastal area of France, and it's a little bit cool and it's a little bit wet over there. And as a result, you find kind of the heartland for this grape that doesn't really find its home in too many other places around the world. And what's unique about this particular grape is it has this ability to maintain this freshness, this zestiness, and it rarely ever, really never is made with the influence of new oak barrels. So it really retains that brightness. And there's an interesting thing they do when they make this wine is after the wine is finished fermenting, they let it sit on what are called the lees, or the dead yeast that has done its job fermenting, making our grape juice into wine. And they let it sit there, and that adds to the flavor and the texture of this refreshing, kind of only moderately aromatic wine. You know, Muscadet is not one of those kind of floral explosions or flavor kind of tornadoes that you get with some other more aromatic grape varietals from around the world. And you know, one of the first things I'm immediately drawn to with this wine is this kind of slight, kind of pale golden color, and that comes from that incredible technique that they use to kind of let that wine sit in contact with those leaves. Chateau de la Gravelle is a property that's very historic. It's been an agrarian wine estate for many years, and the current generation is doing tremendous work in this kind of heartland of Muscadet, the best, stoniest soils. And she's doing things, you know, really beautifully in the organic way that she works with the grapes, which isn't that easy in this area of the world. So, you know, aromatically, this is a wine, again, I'm immediately drawn to this fresh, zesty kind of citrus, delicate melon and delicate orchard fruit and skins of orchard fruits like pears and apples and things like that. No evidence of oak in the wine whatsoever, and it just a really just a pure aromatic experience that speaks to the grape and the place. And then as I taste the wine, it's very stereotypically lighter in body, very mouth-watering in its texture. It's a wine that immediately makes me think of maybe having this with salads or young cheeses and seafood and things like that, or just as a brisk aperitif if I'm hanging out with friends in the park, or if I'm cooking, or it's a warm summer day or a warm spring day or something like that. It's a fantastic wine if you're sitting out on the patio and things like that. One of the reasons that we put it in the fall bundle was because I think it's important as we start thinking about, you know, maybe some cooler weather, depending on where we are and things like that, that we keep a wine available to us, which is that refreshing profile and that has that mouth-watering texture that goes along with those types of foods and that can really stand up to certain types of cuisine that find its way into popularity this time of year. So again, we have a brisk, refreshing, light-bodied, crisp wine, not overly floral, no evidence of oak whatsoever, really refreshing. And it's a wine for some of us, if you like Chablis, for example, this is very similar in profile to that. If you like wines, I'd say almost like a Pinot Grigio, but you're looking for something a little bit more crisp or a little bit more refreshing for the food of the moment. If you like Sauvignon Blanc from France in particular, and you're looking for something a little bit less aromatic and a little bit less overtly citrusy and grassy, Muscadet can do wonderful things for you in those moments. So Chateau de la Gravelle, Muscadet Sèvres Emene, made entirely from organic grapes from this cool western area of the Loire Valley in France. And again, a very unique place because this grape doesn't find its way into vineyards really much over the world compared to this particular region. Our second wine in the bundle, let's stick with the whites for now. Our second wine is going to be the Chenin Blanc from South Africa, from Tulbagh Mountain Vineyards. And this is another estate which does things really very much in harmony with the nature around it, and originally founded as a biodynamic estate, actually. And right now they're farming 100% organically. And South Africa is a very interesting place. They have fantastic growing conditions. And Chenin Blanc is a grape that historically is very important to South Africa. It's a white grape that found its way there very early on in their grape growing history. And they really hung their hat on it. And similar to, again, the Loire Valley in France, this is an area where Chenin Blanc is focused upon, and it really constitutes a large portion of the white wine vineyards throughout the country. And it's really become a calling card for the country. So Chenin Blanc as a grape is interesting. It's another grape that rarely, if ever, finds its way into new oak barrels. So it's another grape that, if you're looking for kind of purity and a lack of oak, could be something that you like. And Chenin Blanc it's been very popular in France and South Africa for a long time, but in the US, it's only been in the past 20 or 30 years that this grape has really captured the imagination and the interest of wine buyers and sommeliers and the wine drinking public. And it's really been an explosion in the past 10 or 15 years of phenomenal Chenin Blancs from South Africa and the Loire Valley in France that have made it to the US, and good for us because it's a delicious white wine grape. It's harvested fairly late into the season, and it always retains a very vibrant acidity in the wine. So it's really mouth-watering and refreshing. It also has the added benefit of a little bit more of a medium-bodied profile compared to the first wine that we tried, the Gravelle Muscadet, and it achieves that weight and that texture without needing the impact of oak and without showing incredibly floral or late harvest aromas and profile. So it has a beautiful golden color to it that comes a little bit from the skin of the Chenin Blanc grape itself. And aromatically, this wine immediately takes me to ripe pears and ripe apples, a little bit more powerful in its aromatics compared to the first wine that we tried today. I don't get any evidence of new oak on the wine. There's no kind of vanilla beans and incenses and cedar wood or anything like that. The wine does not have any new oak on it at all. And on the palate, the wine is dry. The wine has a medium body to it. those flavors of pear and apple really resonate beyond the aroma into the flavors of the wine. It has a really complex long finish. My mouth is kind of still going here, it's still going here. And that's really a tribute to the grape itself. It has the texture from the grape itself around the middle of your palate. It has that kind of brisk, refreshing texture to keep your mouth watering and either waiting for the next sip or your next bite of food. Some of the things I like to serve alongside Chenin Blanc are dishes that are a little bit heartier, whether it be white meats or pork, chicken, some vegetable dishes that have some real flavor to them in terms of their accompaniments or sauce. The body of this wine, that more medium body, really allows it to stand up proudly alongside some of the richer, more savory dishes, where some people might even try a light red wine, or if you're looking for something more substantial, but still without the influence of new oak, which may conflict with some of the flavors, or maybe you just don't like that sort of thing. So this is a wine we're very excited about, the Chenin Blanc from Tulbagh in South Africa. Just want to kind of keep swirling and smelling and drinking it, but we have to get on to our next wine. All right, so we'll start with our reds. And the red wine we're going to start today is the Costa L'Arbol Rioja. And that's what we have right here. So this Rioja is, again, I'll say it again, a little bit of a broken record, made entirely from organically grown grapes. And Rioja is an interesting region for people interested in Spanish wine or wine in general. Rioja is really the single most historic region in Spain for wine, and it is really a reference point for many people who want to approach or are just learning about Spanish wine or drinking Spanish wine for the first time. It's really the spot when it comes to Spanish wine. And Rioja is interesting. I think a lot of people don't realize that it's traditionally a blend of grapes. There's really Spain's most famous grape called Tempranillo, which is a fantastic varietal that's grown in a few other places around the world just because a lot of people seem to like it. I've heard winemaker friends of mine say it's fun to grow, it's fun in the winery. And the Tempranillo grape in Rioja is blended with two or three fantastic friends, which get along with it. One is called Graciano, one is called Grenache, which are the two other ones in this particular wine. And what you have is a wine that really brings the sum of its parts together. The Tempranillo gives you this medium bodied wine, maybe a little bit more towards full, really well balanced with red fruits and a balanced mouthfeel. The Graciano gives you kind of a little bit more of a juiciness, a little bit of a darker color, a little bit of a darker fruit. And the Grenache, which does very well in hot, dry climates, gives you some very high-toned red fruits that has a little bit less color in the grape itself. So the darker Graciano, the lighter Grenache, and that kind of Goldilocks of Tempranillo all come together to make this particular wine. And Rioja doesn't stipulate or tell the growers in what percentages precisely they have to blend these grapes together. It's really a little bit, there are some rules, but it's more in the eye of the beholder. And then there are some rules as far as how long your wine needs to age in oak, and depending how you label it. This wine only goes into oak for about 6 months, which I find really contributes to the balance. So this kind of beautiful, moderate ruby color. It's not super inky. You can see through the wine to some degree. And one of the things that attracted us to this wine right away is this bright, fresh profile of these kind of red berries and blackberries. They're not overwhelmed by the oak, but the oak very much complements this wine. And it's just crying out, just saying, I'm really delicious. I'm going to be really great. You can drink me on my own, or you can pair me with food. And of course, Rioja is one of our great food pairing wines of the world. Let's give it a sip. So this is a 2019, and the year or two extra in bottle have really helped this wine come together. There are Riojas that can age for decades or more. This wine is just drinking absolutely beautifully right now. And there's this deliciously supple and attractive dark red and blackberry fruits really pop out of this wine. And it does all of that. It brings you all of this flavor still within a medium bodied wine. There are many, many more wines which are oakier, fuller, richer, higher in alcohol in the world. But this is a wine that just says, I'm delicious. I'm going to pair well with almost anything you can throw at me on the table, or you can just relax and drink me at home with your friends. It has a little bit of a briskness of texture, born of the Tempranillo and some of the other grapes that we find in there. But overall, it's just a delightful wine that you can be very confident to serve alongside everything from red meats and lamb to poultry and duck, or just if you're looking for a glass of red wine to put alongside food of all sorts of potluck disparate style if they're finding it to your table. It's just a wine you can be really confident about to be complex, balanced, really tasty and delicious. Mm. That is really great. And from my personal taste, I'm really glad that the wine has only gone into oak barrels for a little while. Sometimes extended oak aging can either overwhelm the fruit or it can dry the fruit out a little bit. But this particular wine at this particular point in its evolution really has everything going for it. So that's a little bit about our 2019 Costa Larbol Rioja. Our second red, which I would put in that medium bodied category, is another organically grown Malbec from Argentina, from an area called Mendoza. And for the last 15 or 20 years, Malbec has really taken our market and the world by storm, frankly, because it's just so delicious and agreeable. And most people's reference point for Malbec is Argentina. However, it's actually originally a French grape, which came from most notably a little village called Cahors, Cahors, and it found its way over to Mendoza, Argentina, and it is incredibly, it just took to it like a fish in water. It's incredibly successful there. And there's a little area inside Mendoza called the Uco Valley. And the growing conditions here are really quite fantastic. They're dry, and breezy, so it enables people to farm in a way where they don't have to use much in the way of pesticides or herbicides and fungicides and things like that. And the Malbec grape here, its profile, rather than be a little bit kind of rustic like the French example, here you have these high elevations, a dry climate, breezy, lots of sunshine. It achieves this very user-friendly, dark fruited profile that is really the main reason that Malbec has gotten so popular in the past 15 or 20 years. It's just such a wonderful varietal. And in Argentina, Malbec is often paired alongside roasted meats. Asados is the name of the traditional style of kind of open fire beef cooking and barbecue that they have there. It's got a beautiful kind of medium purple ruby color to it. And aromatically compared to the Costa Larbol Rioja, the fruit profile of this wine is just a little bit darker. If the Rioja was kind of red cherry, maybe blackberry to darker berry, this immediately starts in kind of more of a plum and a blackberry profile. And if you're a cherry, you're definitely kind of a black cherry. And that's just typical of the Malbec grape. Again, we're not overwhelmed by oak with this wine, but it's certainly a present part of it and adds to the complexity and adds to this kind of profile of the wine. On the palate, the wine is dry but juicy, dry but round and soft. Um, it doesn't quite have the briskness of the Rioja. The palate of this wine, it kind of stays here while the Rioja acidity kind of gets to, maybe the lower portion of my palate here. When I talk about texture and acidity in wine, I kind of use this as my meter. If my kind of the sides of my palate salivate, just to hear it's, soft and round, just to hear it's a little bit kind of refreshing. And if it goes all the way up to here, like I'm drinking like a little bit of a lemonade that needed a little bit more sugar, it's very tart, or a daiquiri cocktail with lime juice, then it's really up to here. But this one kind of stays here. It's just round and soft. And that's really one of the reasons that Malbec is so versatile and has become so popular as just this incredible drinkability, and it's credible and an incredible versatility at the table, especially with some of the things I mentioned earlier, the red meats, the grilled meats, where the charred notes or the savory notes or the fatty notes inside the food really pop off against these kind of dark plum and blackberry and black cherry fruits. Really both elevate each other, so it makes the meat taste more savory, or whatever your flavors are in whatever you're cooking, and it makes the savory notes in your food absolutely pop and elevate the dark fruit of the Malbec without any kind of conflict in texture or things like that. So that's a little bit about our 2020 Asado Cruz Malbec. And this has been a real favorite of membership for a number of years now in the catalog. And the 2020 is my favorite yet, and it's drinking very, very well right now. So cheers to that one. So now we're going to move into the wines that I think are kind of, I'd call them medium to full bodied, somewhere kind of in that kind of little zone on a scale of 1 to 10 of body. If the Rioja is a 5 and the Malbec is a 6, now we're hitting the 7s and the 8 and things like that. This is another completely organically grown wine, and a winery that we've been really pleased with in the catalog now for a number of years. We have two grapes here, Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon. And Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon are blended together around the world. And this originally started in the region of Bordeaux, where Cabernet and Merlot really find the home base. And the reason they're blended together quite often, and well, I'll say two reasons why they're blended together quite often and grown together quite often. The cycle of the vines in the ground and in the vineyard is a little bit different, where Merlot is ready a little bit earlier compared to Cabernet Sauvignon. And Merlot starts to come out in the spring a little bit earlier than Cabernet Sauvignon. So if you have a little bit of inclement weather on either end, and you've got a vineyard that's mixed up between Cabernet and Merlot, a lot of times those two grapes can come together to mitigate any kind of natural shenanigans that happen in the beginning or towards the end of your growing season, which is nice. Additionally, Cabernet is a dark fruited grape with a thick skin on it. It gives you ample tannin and texture. Merlot, on the other hand, although it also has nice color to it, is a rounder, softer, more supple wine with tannins that are just really quite a bit more smooth. So if you blend them together, you get the best of both worlds. You get the power and the strength of the Cabernet, and you get the soft roundness from the Merlot. This particular wine has a little bit more Merlot in it than Cabernet, 60 Merlot, 40 Cabernet Sauvignon, and it's grown in an area of France. It's not grown in Bordeaux. It's grown in an area of France a little bit further south, and it's a little bit sunnier, drier, and warmer there. So one, makes it easier to farm organically, and two, the profile of the wines there compared to Bordeaux is a little bit rounder and softer and easy to get into, especially in its youth. There's a little bit of oak influence on this wine, though not much. Again, it's a wine that's very versatile for that reason, but at the same time will make people, I think, happy who appreciate a little bit of oak on their wine. And here, the aromatic components of the wine are very interesting to me, and that's, I think, born really of the grape blend itself. The Merlot and the Cabernet coming together, you've got these juicy fruits in the Merlot, and then you have a little bit more kind of a darker profile from the Cabernet Sauvignon, and just smooched with a little bit of judicious oak use. there's a real juiciness and lushness to this wine from the Merlot portion of the blend that just really pops into the palate right away. And then that Cabernet comes through the kind of, I don't want to call it a supporting cast, this is 40% of the wine, but you definitely have a little bit of that texture in there that lovers of fuller bodied wines will really gravitate towards and will find very appealing. And I think it's a really wonderful blend, and it brings together the best components of these wines, these two grapes. And it's a really perfect example of why these two grapes are grown together and blended together. The juicy softness of the Merlot, the darker fruit with a slightly grittier texture from the Cabernet Sauvignon, both with the added benefit of being grown in this sunny, dry, warmer area further south in France, as opposed to some of the more famous regions of Bordeaux, where the climate is a little bit different, as are the soils. So really, really tasty wine, and certainly a little bit fuller in body than both the Malbec and the Rioja we tasted a minute ago, but still on that kind of scale of 1 to 10, still firmly in that kind of 6 to 7 range. And again, the Merlot really softens things up. So just a magnificent wine, showing the sum of its parts. And the last wine that we have in the fall bundle is a wine that is really near and dear to our hearts at Thrive Market. It's a wine we've had since the beginning of our catalog. And it's a wine that is a fantastic story. A young woman returning to her family's roots in Bordeaux after a number of years trying a few other professions and traveling the world, and immediately taking over a portion of the estate that had been farmed organically for about a decade, and continuing and improving upon those practices. So Pauline, if you're out there, if you watch this, cheers to you. And the wines just get better and better every year. This is a blend of 3 grapes, actually, and it's the 3 main grapes you'll find blended all around Bordeaux. You have Cabernet Sauvignon, which is about 2/3 of this wine. And that's a little bit unusual because where Pauline is located on the right-hand side, called Bordeaux is often divided in broad strokes into left bank and right bank. It refers to a river that cuts the region in half. And in this particular area, you find a lot more Merlot in the ground. And it's a little bit unusual compared to our neighbors to have a wine that's 2/3 Cabernet Sauvignon. Then you have about a quarter of the wine, which is Merlot, and 15% of the wine is Cabernet Franc. And Cabernet Franc is a grape that finds its home in Bordeaux and the Loire Valley in France, amongst a few other places. And from the Cabernet Sauvignon, again, you get a depth in the fruit, a little bit more power and fuller profile. From Merlot, you bring that softness and roundness. And then Cabernet Franc gives it a spine of texture. It really brings this kind of armature on which all of this kind of dark fruit and power can stand. And it's a grape that some people really love on its own. And it's a grape that in Bordeaux is really used to just kind of bring those kind of corner puzzle pieces to a blend. And it's used very, very deftly here, and I really appreciate that. This is a fantastic vintage of this particular wine. And on the nose, you're really just getting the real entire combination of all of these different grapes. And I could really kind of sit and smell it all day, because you have so much going on here between a little bit of more of a brightness and freshness from the Cabernet Franc, that kind of middle zone of that Merlot, and the plushness and the dark fruit, and then of course the kind of darker blackberry and plum profile you get from your Cabernet Sauvignon, and really well balanced use of oak on the wine. On the palate, the wine is dry but very complex. All of the little light bulbs of my brain and my palate are really kind of turning on here right away. I have texture, I have flavor, I have a little bit of tannin in there from that Cabernet Sauvignon, but immediately the Merlot comes in to make sure it doesn't get too, out of control or gritty. And then you have Cabernet Franc, and they're saying, well, don't forget about me because I'm going to keep this wine refreshing and bright. So the slightly cooler climate of Bordeaux compared to the Merlot, the Maspaillé, Merlot, and Cabernet that we just tried a moment ago, which is lusher, rounder, a little bit more kind of sun drenched. And then you have this wine, which has all of those items going on, but just has a little bit more texture to it. Really, really fantastic wine to pair alongside food. If you want to get fancy, you could toss this in a decanter of any sort. And again, decanters don't have to be fancy. I've used everything from actually, my favorite decanter is a gift I got when I was younger. It's an antique Jack Daniels bottle. It's just this big, bold, thick piece of glass that never seems to break. You could throw this in there and let it air out for 15 or 20 minutes, and that would even improve the wine further. So this wine, again, it's fantastic wine for this season, even if you want to throw some, in your closet, in your basement, and hang on to it for a couple of years to maybe give as gifts or open up over the next couple of years and watch how it evolves. It's really a fantastic, delicious wine, again, blended from those three main Bordeaux grapes that make some of the most delicious wines in the world: Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Cabernet Franc. So that's a brief introduction to the 2022 fall bundle. I think the breadth of the wines, whether they be different varietals, dance off between similar varietals, profile of the wine, two medium-bodied reds, two reds that are a little bit more towards fuller on the scale, some white wines that are fantastic with all sorts of different types of cuisine or even on their own, really has a little bit of something for everybody and a little bit of something for every dish. So I really hope you enjoy it and look forward to seeing you next time. Cheers.